Viewers, first up, we have some big breaking news coming in. Donald Trump has put out a social media post on Truth Social. He says, United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader. Trump has said President Nicolás Maduro, who has been along with his wife, has been captured and flown out of the country. And this operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. This is the latest breaking news that we are tracking. Donald Trump has confirmed that Nicolás Maduro, the president of Venezuela, has now been captured along with his wife, and they have been flown out of the country. To give us more insights and to help us understand what the situation is and what is ahead for Venezuela, we have our editor Kartikeya Sharma joining us live on this broadcast. Kartikeya, tell us what is exactly happening in Venezuela and what happens from here on after Maduro's capture by the US.
I think it's the breaking news of the century. I think it's something as important as Iraq, because a head of a state has been captured by another state. In Iraq, which was a multi-nation war against Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was not captured. There were local forces who captured Saddam Hussein. There was a trial. But the United States of America has captured Maduro, and Donald Trump is going to hold a press conference. This entire attack has taken place on the ground that Maduro was entirely responsible for flooding American streets with fentanyl and drugs. But the baseline is that the Maduro was also responsible for supplying cheap oil to Russia and China. Now, in that case, if Maduro is captured, his wife captured, flown out of Venezuela, I don't know what sort of defense paraphernalia which Venezuela had. Secondly, it's a rough, I would say it's a very crude display of the Monroe Doctrine. It's an imperial doctrine. This is American imperialism in display. You have captured another head of state. There is no rule-based order. I mean, I have no sympathies for Maduro. Maduro is a despot himself. He has not allowed democracy to take root in Venezuela. But for Maduro to be captured by the United States of America on the pretext of, supplying drugs and not doing enough. Tomorrow they can strike Iran and say that we don't want Ayatollah Khamenei there because Ayatollah Khamenei is not allowing the protest to take place. So this sort of an intervention which the world is witnessing is an era of great instability. Russians are in Ukraine. Tomorrow, if China attacks Taiwan and says, this is our sphere of influence, and what are you going to do? Then what are you going to do? Which means that the world again is getting divided into spheres of influence. This is like going back to the imperial times. And look at these night operations which have taken place in Venezuela. And this happened when the Chinese delegation was there. So the entire operation happened in presence of Chinese delegation. It means that they were in their embassy when Maduro was attacked, when senior Chinese presence was in Venezuela. So Americans have shown who's the boss in this part of the world. It's a very big signal that has gone out, and the Chinese were there. So I don't think that this is going to go down very well. People can go to United Nations and complain, but it doesn't make a difference. United Nations doesn't count for much. But for Maduro to be captured in the attack that has taken place is mind-boggling, because you have lifted up the family of the first family of a country which is thousands of miles away. It's like India doing an operation in Fiji, saying that they are against Indian interest. So this is unprecedented. This is not even what this is something like what Israel did in Lebanon, what Israel did in Fordo with Americans. So with Trump, this sort of transactional diplomacy and this sort of military intervention is very, very dangerous, Deepak. I mean to say it's happening far away, but it has tremendous consequence for the world.
So this means that Trump has basically destabilized Venezuela completely. So what happens next?
I wouldn't use the word destabilized completely. I would say that they're trying a regime change. When I use the word regime change, because you see, one has to remember that the woman who got the Nobel Peace Prize is from Venezuela. And Trump, Trump, and she said, it's because of the Trump I got the Peace Prize. And she was exiled from Venezuela by Maduro. So Maduro himself has a very dictatorial history, but that's another thing. That's another thing. I'm not surprised by the regime change that is taking place. The Americans have always done it. Salvador Allende in Chile in 1970s was killed by CIA. And then Pinochet came to power and he ruled Chile for the next 40 years. So the Americans have been doing it, whether it's Indonesia, whether it's Suharno, whether it's Sukarno, or whether it's the killing of Mossadegh in Iran. and then after that the Raza dynasty came over because the Americans were concerned about their oil. So the Americans were also involved there. So the lines which have been drawn in the modern world today is because of the British, American and the French imperialism. The countries like Syria, countries like Jordan, countries like Iraq, they were born out of the map of Ottoman Empire when the entire empire collapsed during the First World War. But the issue here is that this was a unilateral action. One country has gone and actually it's like India doing a unilateral action in its neighborhood and capturing the head of the state. I mean, say America has just displayed its complete power in South America, saying that no one gets to intervene there. But my question is slightly different. If the same rules gets to be applied on Taiwan, if the Russians start applying the same rule on Latvia, Belarus, they have done it in Ukraine, then what will happen? Israel does that in Gaza, Israel is doing it in Lebanon, Israel is doing it in the border areas of Iran. Then you have Syria, then you really have a problem on your hand. Then where does the buck stop? Because ultimately, if the only interest which holds you together is your national interest, then the rule-based order collapses.
That's right, Karthikeyan. How do you expect the world to respond in the face of, Maduro's capture by the US?
I don't think the world is going to say anything. The response of the world is going to be muted. America is a superpower, though the Chinese are very close to them in terms of economy. But the ability of the Americans to strike anywhere, or the ability of the Americans to organize a strike, it's actually a display of the raw American power. You see, who could have organized an invasion like that? Local media was reporting boots on the ground. I think this must have been the boots on the ground. If we can play those visuals in the full screen, we will be able to show our viewers better. If we can play the visuals of the the strikes that had taken place today, then our viewers will be able to understand what was happening. This is how Americans were striking the Venezuelan countryside entire night. They hit 4 cities there, not one. They hit Caracas, they hit Guaira, they hit 2 other cities. We'll show it on the map. We're going to show you the map. The 4 cities, there's an American deployment. They had deployed Gerald Ford there. This is the map. These are the 4 cities which the American had actually hit in Venezuela. 4 cities. They had hit 4 cities.
But Karthikeyan, do you think Maduro was expecting, or this is an unexpected attack? Time and again, Donald Trump had warned what he could do and what Maduro was staring at. But Maduro, do you think that he probably didn't really pay heed to Donald Trump's threats?
I think Maduro felt that he will be able to get away. And I think Maduro also felt that Americans will bomb them, but they will lose appetite. And Maduro also felt that Americans will not deploy boots on the ground. And I think he did not have the intelligence that he will be captured. I think that's the bottom line. Maduro was thinking that this is going to be Iran, or this is going to be maybe some sort of a longish version of Iraq or Afghanistan. He will have to take hits, but then Americans will lose interest. He was, I think, thinking of that. But Americans wanted him. They didn't come for the state. They have actually captured a head of a state. That's why it's a big story.
That's right. And let me also once again read what Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social. He has said, the United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolás Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. And this operation was done in conjunction with the US law enforcement, and details to follow. There will be a news conference today at 11 a.m. That is the local time in the United States at Mar-a-Lago. So what can we expect from here on, Karthikeyan?
I would say that, Americans are not going to let go of the entire Venezuelan operation. Americans are also not going to let go of what happens to Maduro. You have to understand that what has America done? America has actually gone out and captured a head of state. You see, it's not capturing a drug lord. They captured El Chapo, but the Mexicans were involved. Americans went and killed Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, but Osama bin Laden was responsible for bringing down the Twin Towers and Pentagon. So, it was a declared terrorist. But what is important here is, Americans have started to declare people unilaterally as terrorists or threat against the American interests. You know, the killing of the Qasem Soleimani, how did they kill Qasem Soleimani in Iraq 6 years ago? Qasem Soleimani was designated as a terrorist. IRG was designated as a terrorist organization. And under their law, Americans can go and kill anyone if you designate someone a terrorist or terrorist organization. That is why they could kill a sitting Iranian general, head of Quds forces in Iraq, because they designated him. Now the issue is, if tomorrow India starts designating someone as terrorist and we bump them off, we know what has happened in Canada when we bumped off two small little, drug lords there. You know, the entire American establishment and the Canadians were up in arms. So it's an unequal world. You know, this is telling us that we are dealing with the unequal world. This is an unequal world, and that's what we are dealing with.
And Donald Trump has been acting unilaterally. He has no regard for United Nations. No UNSC meetings will make a difference. And in fact, we also have Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, who's joining us on this live broadcast. Lieutenant General, a very good afternoon to you. Maduro has been captured. How do you see the situation?
Definitely, that is what the Americans have been wanting it for a long, long time. They would have much liked Maduro to leave the country, and the intention was to depose him, because they already have the Nobel Peace Prize winner now as the opposition candidate, whom they would much like to install, because she thanked Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize that she got. So in that context, as you see, hopefully the Venezuelans must reconcile. If they do not, then there is going to be a big, huge problem for the Americans. But since the opposition leader, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, seems also to have some kind of a following in Venezuela, I'm sure she's the candidate who would now be nominated as the president, one. Secondly, Colombia does not recognize Venezuela, but they have the National Liberation Army going from Venezuela to Colombia, porous border, and almost 3 million of these refugees of Venezuela in Colombia.
General Kulkarni, Karthikeya, you know, I have a twofold question, sir. Sorry, I'm interrupting you, sir. My question is very simple, sir. You know, if Russians can do Venezuela, if Russians can do Ukraine, American can do Venezuela, what prevents Chinese from doing a Taiwan, sir? I mean to say, they have captured a head of a state. I'm not saying that they have not done it. They have, Allende they killed, Mossadegh they bumped off. Americans have been doing regime change, either killing the head of the state or by allowing protests to take over, which we have seen in Nepal and Bangladesh, the coups they organized. But this time around, they have actually flown out with Maduro and Maduro's wife. You know, I think these guys were waiting for American interest to wane away, but they came captured. I mean, sir, what is it telling us? What is it telling the world? This raw display of power. I have no sympathy for Maduro, who is a despot or a drug supplier, but still a head of a state, general.
Karthikeya, my way or highway is our way. For them, it is only their way. And they will do everything possible to see that their backwaters, and in no way either they would allow the Chinese to be there, or the Russians be there, or for that matter, anybody. You see what's happening in Panama right now. You see what the Chinese are saying. We won't give an inch of territory to for whatever interest that they have in Latin America. You see the kind of relationship between Cuba and USA. See the relationship of Colombia and USA, Venezuela, USA, Brazil, USA, Mexico, USA. So USA also is surrounded by countries inimical to USA. But USA would much like to push NATO into Ukraine and see to it that they get into Russia. So it's after all, USA has to reconcile that it is no longer a unipolar world, it's a multipolar world, and much goes if there's some kind of a bit of a diplomacy involved. You may declare Maduro as a drug mafia, but it isn't always like that. They are eyeing that 18% of oil, right? The Chinese use and consume something like 16 million barrels per day. Americans consume 20 million barrels per day. India is consuming only about 5 million barrels per day. What have the Chinese done? Tied up for about $40 billion with the Iranians for oil. Similar amount with Russians for gas. With similar thing, interest in Venezuela. You see what they've done in Panama Canal, the Chinese. So obviously the Americans are concerned.
There's a bit of a breaking news, sir. General Kulkarni, there's a bit of a breaking news. The US Delta forces, officially the first forces operational detachment, they captured Maduro. US Delta forces, officially the first forces captured Maduro is the US Army's highly secretive Tier 1 Special Mission Unit formed by counterterrorism, hostage rescue and direct action operations against Joint Special Operations Command. Modeled after the British SAS, it recruits from elite army units like Green Berets, Rangers. It focuses on raids, surgical response to critical threats too sensitive for conventional forces operating under names like Combat Application Group and Task Force Green. So the US Delta Force, after the Navy SEALs, Maduro was captured by Delta Force, US Delta Force, Detachment 1, SFOD. General Kulkarni, please shed some light on these operations and these, the special commands with the, number of special commands which the Americans have, modeled after the British SAS. General Kulkarni.
Yes, definitely. Kadi, look at it. The absolute special forces, elite forces of America, all of that they must have been doing. None of it is possible without the support on the ground, because all of them have been landed from the air. And the very fact that they could capture the palace, they could capture Maduro, they could capture his wife, they knew exactly where it was. I'm sure there must have been bunkers made down to have taken him, they knew where it was. So Americans have adequate intelligence and also their sources inside Venezuela to be able to operate at this point of time. The fact that they had totally surrounded Venezuela for a long time, they did not hesitate capturing tankers of all other countries, including that of China, flying a Panama flag. It's indicative that yes, Trump was serious. More than Trump, the deep state in America and understand that now if Americans allow Chinese or anybody for that matter in the backwaters where they seem to be keen. You see Trump's interest in wanting to buy Arctic. Why does he want to buy Denmark? Why does he want to buy Arctic? They've seen for that reason that there are countries which will be interested in getting it around them. And hence, it is oil. Energy is the most important thing. The Chinese, as I said, look at the consumption, 16 million barrels per day. How much can they take from Russia at this point of time? They've also tied up with Iran. They're wanting those 18% of the world's reserves, which are in Venezuela. Saudi Arabia has much less reserves than what it is in Venezuela. So there is a lot of interest that the Americans have. Obviously, half of the Venezuelans have already left. So many 3 million are in Colombia, though Colombia does not recognize Maduro. So there's a very complex situation, and Americans will have their way. There is no denying the fact, much that we would not like it the way the Americans are doing. It is wrong to have done that way. But then America is looking at their interest, and so now we know if anybody is wanting to say that the Russians must not see their interest, and the Americans must only be able to see their interest, and that way the Chinese feel, well, their interests are being compromised if people enter the South China Sea or get anywhere close to Taiwan. So it's all it's a catch-22 situation for everybody.
But General, this is General, sorry, there's another breaking news that is coming in. You are saying it's a catch-22 situation. The Colombians want sort of a special meet in the United Security Council. But what Americans have done is that they have not let the boots be on the ground. The boots were on the ground and the boots are now out of the ground. So is it also because of the fact that the hard lessons the Americans have learned in Afghanistan, Iraq and Vietnam that, when you put American boots on the ground, ultimately America has lost wherever it has tried to capture the territory, sir. Whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's Iraq or whether it is Vietnam. This time around in Venezuela when the action is being done, they have just captured the person and they have gone away. So what's your, sir, one, is it different from what the Americans have been doing? And secondly, sir, is there a lesson for the world, what the Americans have done, sir? The raw demonstration of Monroe Doctrine.
Definitely, Kartikeya, what you're saying is absolutely right. Americans wouldn't want boots on ground in Venezuela because the Venezuelans, the ones who are there in the country, the ones who have not yet left the country, were with Maduro in a large number and they were all ready to fight it out. The Americans would want to fight with the Venezuelans. There I was at Maduro. They have learned their hard lessons in Vietnam. They've learned their lesson in Iraq. They've learned their lesson in Afghanistan. And wherever the Americans intervene, the Americans have suffered losses. And therefore, this was an absolutely clean operation in which they used the Delta Force, picked up Maduro, his wife, and that is what they've been saying. Trump has been saying so for a long time that Maduro must be given, he must leave the country. They were very keen to depose him, but that was not possible. It's not been possible for the last 25 years, ever since Hugo and relationships with America, his handing over to Maduro and their relationship with America. So it's been a very difficult times even for America, but Americans should, I would still recommend, Americans should always be showing the cowboy style of wanting to do things, in a manner in which it conveys wrong lessons, does not convey right. You can't always be saying might is right. I can do whatever I want to. And then let not other countries, every country has its own identity. And we must respect their feelings. We must respect their aspirations. That is what the UN was meant for. But UN has become defunct totally. Colombia, despite not having relations, is much willing to go to UN, is willing to go against the Americans, because Colombia doesn't see eye to eye with America, even though they have not recognized Venezuela Maduro. So there is so much happening in that Latin American state. And you know the relationship of Mexico, based on that, the wall that is coming up between America. America can become great, making America great again, maybe the motto. Good, no problem. Every country must become great, but not at the cost of others. Then that greatness may not last, and a civil war starts, a whole lot of insurgency starts, a whole lot of terrorism starts. All of this starts, then it's very, very difficult then to control it. Americans have the might to do it. But I still would say Americans, and that may be one of the reasons why Americans don't want to have their boots on ground, fight out the Venezuelans. They did what they wanted to do, and knowing fully well that their own opposition leader, a Nobel Prize winner, is already there in Venezuela. That lady can always take over the country whenever, because it's again in Syria they can have an Al Qaeda, al-Shara back again as the president of Syria. Anything can happen, but we have to be a lesson learned. You have to be strong enough to have adequate deterrence. But small countries can't have any deterrence with a country as strong in America. So the Chinese are looking at it, and I'm sure the Chinese understand.
So Chinese delegation was in Caracas, sir. So Chinese delegation was in Caracas when this attack has happened. You know, there is a photograph which the BRICS Twitter handle tweeted that, you know, we don't know where the Chinese delegation is. So I think they are also, I think they are they have sent a message to the China also that they take their backyard very seriously, because China has been making presence in Africa, UAE, Riyadh, and South America very, very prominently, if I may use the word, you know, in terms of trade, oil, in terms of manufacturing. So, you know, for Americans to do that, but the Chinese, no courtesy shown, you know. No courtesy shown there.
Kartike, if you remember, when our own foreign minister then, Mr. Bajpai, was in China, and what did the Chinese do? Attack Vietnam. If the Chinese did that to us, they know the Americans are doing that now to the Chinese, but that the delegation may be there, they will do what they want to do. So all these kind of things backfire, and hence it is very important that diplomacy must prevail. It's not a world that might is right. It's a world where things must move in a little more, the rule of law must prevail. If one doesn't like a particular person, for whatever the reason it may be, there are various means of doing it. And Venezuela, despite so much of oil, much more than Saudi Arabia, you see the standard of living in Venezuela. You see the kind of people who have left Venezuela, 3 million in Colombia. People had migrated from Venezuela to Colombia, 3 million. How many of them have come to America? Then, despite that, I think Venezuela had very little option, but then they decided to stand up to America. And Americans have also conveyed it in no uncertain terms that anybody who decides to stand up to them, they will not hesitate to use force. And they've used that. It's not easy. It's almost like, would use a very strong word, but it's something you can't just go to somebody else's country, pick up their president, their wife, and just they go away thinking that they don't see eye to eye, and they don't seem to listen to what the Americans want them to listen to.
Absolutely. 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 Thank you, General Kulkarni. Thank you. We are really running short of time. Thank you for joining us. It's a big breaking, Deepak. You know, the big breaking in the sense that, you know, Americans have captured Maduro. The President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, is going to hold a press conference tonight, right into your bulletin at prime time. And I don't know what is he going to say. You know, I'm surprised that there's been no word as to where is he being kept. Is he on the United States nuclear aircraft carrier? Is he in some insider submarine? Have they taken him to Florida, like to a high-profile prison where El Chapo was able to break out. El Chapo, you know, has been kept, you know, because Maduro is not a drug lord. But I would say that this is unprecedented, that a sitting head of a state with his entire family from the presidential quarter has been lifted out from a very defended place and flown out by the Delta Force, and a Delta Force is not operating with 100 people. It's a short squad, it's a small squad, 30, 25 people. So, I think, we'll have another Argo here, or another story, which helicopters were used, which weapons were used, how did they, jam the GPS, how did they go to the presidential quarter, who was defending the president, how much firepower was used. I think that will be one Hollywood film, I'm telling you. This operation has big ramification globally. Apart from the fact that, they have done something which is completely unexpected, but it has deep ramification for international politics, rule-based order, Deepak.
That's right, Karthikeya. And now that, Venezuelan defense minister is also saying that we will not negotiate, we will ultimately prevail. What does he, what is he trying to say? Can he really stand up to Donald Trump?
I don't think, this is rhetoric. This is rhetoric. This is nothing. This is just rhetoric. So I don't think Americans are interested in taking over Venezuela. They're affecting a regime change. In fact, what Americans have done is they have effected a regime change. This is nothing but a complete regime change affected by United States of America. You have taken away the president. You have broken the linchpin of the coalition which Maduro was ruling. Now there will be complete clamor for who's going to replace Maduro. Someone who replaces Maduro, America is going to talk to them. Either he genuflects in front of them, or he will be, the same fate will be reserved for them. So, Venezuela is in for the tough time.
That's right, and US has time and again said that, Maduro has been an illegitimate president, although he lost. The official figure said that the opposition candidate won by
that way
landslide.
that action can be taken against Putin also. That way action can be taken against Ayatollah Khamenei also. That way action can be taken against so many despots. Why isn't America attacking Myanmar if it is for democracy? Why isn't America attack Pakistan when if it's for democracy? Why isn't he capturing General Munir? Because General Munir is showing him rare earth minerals. And this guy is supplying oil to China.
That's right, and it clearly goes on to show that America wants to send a message not to Venezuela or to Maduro, but to China and Russia, who have expanded their footprints across the nation. And this is something that will continue to develop, and all eyes will be on that press conference, Karthikeya, by Donald Trump.
Absolutely, absolutely.
With that, viewers, it's a wrap on this edition of the Bulletin. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for that explosive news conference by US President Donald Trump.